Thanks for dropping by. I'm Butch,
I'm Katie.
and we're soldiers, leaders, family members, and
Nerds.
nerds. We want to discuss with you applicable lessons learned you can take away in your Alice Pack.
This is Army Leaders Improving Through Collective Experiences, or
Alice.
ALICE. This video is not officially affiliated or endorsed by the U.S. Army. And today's topic is about the 3 leadership styles that we can apply to the Army. There's a lot of leadership styles. It's many. But we're going to focus on 3 that we found in an article and thought were interesting, and then bring up some of the articles that you've written.
Mm-hmm.
The first type of leadership we'd like to talk about is transformational leadership. It focuses on individual growth and organizational enhancement by growing the individual, making them smarter, advancing their social, emotional, intellectual growth, throwing everything you've got at it, creating that individual, a charismatic and inspirational leader.
What I think transformational leadership means to listeners and to me is what really makes transformational leadership transformational is providing that clear vision for subordinates. So for me personally, on the People First Task Force, my advisor, Colonel Gecky, he really got us organized and created that vision. And he said, here's the goals we want to set, or the goals we want to meet. Here's how we're going to get there. And he really laid out the entire picture of how everyone on our little small team was going to accomplish those goals. So I think that kind of leadership is transformational. He was very charismatic, very extroverted, had those relationships. I know we're kind of blending the personalities versus styles.
I don't know if he is, though.
I don't know. He's very go, and
he is very task-oriented.
Yeah.
I would see, correction, solution-oriented.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's extroverted.
I mean, we did the personality assessment, and we did 2 or 3 of them, and he came back.
Okay.
I think ESTJ or ENTJ.
Okay.
So he was always the extroverted one. He could, for me personally, I'm not sure if he just was that kind of guy. He was very interesting. He talked to me for 15, 20 minutes every time. It was him talking, me listening. He'd ask me how I was, and then it'd be him talking. I mean, he's just very high energy guy.
And how did that transform you?
I mean, it energized me personally. And I'm a pretty big introverted guy, and later on in this podcast we can talk about my introverted leadership article. But I just wanted to say that vignette was Colonel Gecky. He's now the 10th Mountain Division Divardi commander. I think he was a transformational leader because extremely organized, built that vision, and he got that buy-in from us because he was so organized and so charismatic about we're going to deliver positive things for the Army. So that it was energizing for me, and it's sometimes difficult for me to respond to extroverts because they have so much energy, and it's like, okay, we settle down a little bit. Like, it's a little too much at first, but you get used to it. But I mean, I loved his energy, and he was a great guy to be around, a great leader. But I think he really fits the bill as transformational, and I think our director had that too because he took the vision, he gave us. You can speak to it as well, and you did the prevention line of effort and all that stuff. But I think for me, he really gave me that latitude to meet the intent, to meet the vision. So that's why he was transformational.
Yes, I like what you said about how there were goals and an outline vision, and that there was a pathway to almost draw it to whatever your goals are personally, and what you're doing actually feeds into the larger element. And I had a really great leader. We'll call out Sergeant Major Smith. His saying was, I'm not going to tell you how to bake the cake or what goes into it, but at the end, I better have a chocolate cake.
Sergeant Major always have the good quotes. That's good.
That is a fact.
I like it.
And I don't think I could ever deliver it as effectively as he did.
Yeah.
But clearly it's profound and it's stuck with me. But it really is. It's how do I make you the best soldier, the best you are? And then how does that piece fit into the larger vision or the larger organizational goals? And it's really effective to match personal values with organizational values. In fact, that's how you accomplish organizational commitment, is matching someone's internal identified values to what's happening in the organization. And as those start to meet up, you get 60-70% levels of commitment to the organization, which is a proven study. I'll put it there.
Yeah.
It's really great.
Yeah, and just to continue that, your point on focusing on the individual growth, it's kind of a common sense thing. How I interpret it is, if you improve the individuals on your team, obviously the team's going to improve. And for me, Colonel Gecky gave me those left and right limits. He said, "This is what I expect of you. I know you want to get a master's degree," which I told him, and he let me allow that time for me to get my master's degree, because he knew if we have better skills on the team and better writing skills, which I developed through that master's program, and I was able to write a few articles that helped out arguably, some people problems. So I think he understood that, and he gave me the time for it. So I think that's another key aspect that you hit on with transformational leadership, is giving your individuals on your team that time to grow as individuals and improve their skill set, because it only improves the team. If I know it sounds like a sacrifice at first.
No.
I took a couple hours kind of away from typical duty day working, but Colonel Gecky knew I would come back the next day, weeks, months with better skills that would improve my performance, and he understood that. I think it takes a very, very high level of wisdom from a leader to do that, to make that sacrifice for others. But yeah.
And I don't know if my experience is unique, but I've always experienced people investing in me to basically replace them. They're like, I know I'm not going to be here forever, but I need to go up. I need to move up. The best way to move up, and I think the Army or maybe military is unique in this sort of way, is that I will get promoted if I train my replacement effectively. If I can make a soldier better than me, I'm moving up.
That's what we want. I mean,
that's me.
Yeah, that's what we want.
That's exactly what we want.
And the last point that I wanted to talk on transformational leadership is the bullet point that you said, helping subordinates see the purpose of what they're doing.
Yeah,
I think that gets lost a good bit, and it's hard to tell younger soldiers how these smaller tasks, these kind of monotonous tasks, how it ties to the bigger picture. And it's difficult for a leader, but I think it's very important to tie those tasks to the overarching purpose of that unit. You have to do maintenance on your Stryker vehicle, your tank, your Abrams, whatever vehicle. You have to do the oil changes, all that stuff. That helps us whenever we go to the National Training Center, where we go to the field and it works, and we can actually train hard with it. That's the bigger picture. And I know it's hard to kind of connect all those dots for junior soldiers, but we owe it to them as leaders. I think that's where you get the transformation happening in organizations, is they connect the dots. They show them that purpose, how everything is connected, from Monday morning motor pool formations to ACFTs to all the stuff we do every day in the Army. It's connected to a bigger picture, and that's very important for transformational leaders.
I have another great Sergeant Major quote.
Go ahead. I love it.
Some people see the stars, but some people see the constellations and how things connect to each other.
I like it.
Sergeant Major Disc. So the second type of leadership that we'd like to talk about is servant leadership. That's where you foster development of subordinates through taking care of their needs. It's based on trust. You have to build a relationship with your subordinates and that rapport with the team. Leaders collaborate with their subordinates in making decisions. They mentor in order to get that best performance. And then they have that ultimate feeling of, you have my back.
Yeah, my personal vignette with this is, while I was a support company commander in 1st Armored Division, our Battalion S3, Major Kelly, was an outstanding servant leader. So we had to do a warfighter exercise out in El Paso, Texas, in the training area at Fort Bliss, and it was 100 degrees, just god-awful hot, sandstorm, sand getting in every crevice, and no one wants to be out there. I mean, it's tough. It's really hard with all your kit on. You're wearing body armor, wearing your helmet. I mean, it's rough. And he was out there setting up the flooring, which, if you've ever done a division level exercise, the flooring is the worst part. And as a support company commander, that was my first FTX. It's like, I never want to see a plastic floor. ever again. It takes hours whenever no one knows what's going on, which we didn't. It was the first time, and Major Kelly had all that patience, and he was out there laying every block of floor with us. And that I was like, this is what a guy. It's just what a leader. And I to this day, I would follow him anywhere. And he's retired now. I think he lives in Kansas. But what a great person, and we all really looked up to him because he was out there with the soldiers. And he didn't have to be. He was Battalion S3. He didn't have to be out there with the 40. We were doing preparation activities, so he didn't really have to be out there. And there was a couple other field grades. Major Noose was another one who was I think he was a functional area officer on the division staff, and he didn't have to be out there either. And he was out there helping us set up a tent and whatnot. And it was awesome to see because I was a commander. I was the leader. I was supposed to be the biggest, the highest ranking leader on site. And it was just good to see a major, and there were some lieutenant colonels out there as well, just setting the standard to, if the soldiers are out there doing this tough stuff, I'm going to be out there. And I think that's what servant leadership means to me. And I'll pass it over to you if you have any good vignettes like that. Or
I kind of want to just highlight where, when I heard in your story that, it's almost like he might not have known what that would mean to you. Maybe he did predict what that would mean, but maybe he just felt personally compelled to do that or to be in the thick of it. I would never ask you to do anything I wouldn't do, but then modeled that, really showed up for you. And I guess maybe the takeaway that I heard is that you never know what actions you might take that are very meaningful for someone else. And maybe one of our tools is that we need to maybe voice that to our leaders and be like, when you did that thing, that meant a lot to me. Keep doing that thing.
Yeah, that recognition. And then
maybe.
It's powerful, I think. And it's tough because I strongly believe in the phrase that power corrupts. As you get more rank in the Army, you got to forget where you come from. And those gentlemen, they didn't forget where they came from. And I think both of them were prior service. I think that has a little bit to do with it, but they didn't think of themselves as better than anyone else. I think that's part of being a servant leadership. And I think some leaders may perceive or believe that if I'm out there with the soldiers doing soldierly work, I think the phrase is said, that's an NCO job, that's an officer job, that's a soldier job. And we get in trouble with that because we forget where we came from.
Don't do that.
That vignette, if you're listening, that's one of the most powerful experiences for my Army career was having him out there with us, just doing the monotonous stuff. It sucked. It was rough, and he was out there sweating, starving. We didn't eat until 3:00 that day, but it's like he took care of us, and that kind of segues into my other point of servant leadership with my first sergeant when I was a lieutenant, First Sergeant Courtney Palms. He's retired now as well. His first question whenever he would see me out in the field every day was, "Did you eat, sir? Did you eat?" Every time.
Taking care of soldiers.
It was kind of a joke. It was kind of a joke between him and me because he would ask me. I was like, "First sergeant, you always ask me, have I eaten?" So he's like, "Hey, I'm just trying to take care of you, sir."
Yeah.
He's just so old school. He's like, "Did you eat? I got you." And he did chow runs. Yeah. He brought food for us every day in the field, and he would always ask me, "Sir, have you got something to eat? Sir, you got to keep drinking water because look at me, I'm pretty pale, and we're out in the El Paso heat, right?" So I get sunburnt. Told me I look like a red Kim light out there. And he would have sunscreen for me. So, he's taking care of me. I think that's another part of servant leadership is you take care of your people regardless of rank. And he always looked out for me, and I appreciated that. But because I think sometimes as leaders we forget to look out for ourselves. So it was nice to have a first sergeant who had that. Took me under his wing. He's like, "Sir, did you eat?" Every time. I'll never forget that too. And he's such a great servant leader because that was the first thing on his mind. He made sure everyone had something to eat. They had water, beans and bullets. We always say that in the Army. First sergeants do the beans and bullets, I think it kind of gets under the rug, so to speak. But that's part of it. Your soldiers' basic needs. Look at the problems we're facing right now with dining facilities, barracks. Just make sure they got a good place to live, a good place to eat.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that hard, and there's some things that leaders can do to make it better.
Those are those doctrinal basic essentials for morale that feed into morale. Meal, chow, living arrangements, hot water.
Yep.
It's
air conditioning.
Oh my gosh, air conditioning in your circumstances, right? A comfort. Those things that maybe we take for granted. in our day-to-day lives as we live in comfort, but then of course in the field are challenges that we must plan ahead for. And yeah, NCOs do that. This just long, arduous task of planning and leading up to that to get those beans and bullets there at the right time at the right place.
Yeah. And then another thing that was powerful for servant leaders, I think a powerful vignette for me was that last bullet point: subordinates feel that this leader has my back, and that's so important to extend that trust. And I had a good situation as a coach, as a baseball coach, because I don't think all these lessons you can apply them in your lives,
broadly.
regardless of if you're in the military or not. Is for my players that I coach, I always tell them I have your back, and you have to act on that. You can't just say it. You have to act on it. So one of the players asked me, "Hey, I want to try this out," and I said, "Okay, try it out. Let's see where it goes." And unfortunately, we didn't play so well whenever we tried that thing out. But you have to extend trust. He will know that Coach Besaidis, he trusts me that I know what I'm doing, and he will let me try it. It's like, just try it. Let's see where it goes. And that gets back to, I think, bullet number 3 is getting buy-in from subordinates, asking them for planning considerations. Say, what do you think? What do you think we should do here? And it's very powerful, because for a junior soldier, I saw it when I was in company command, for a captain to be talking to a PFC, I would ask them routinely, what do you think? How can we improve maintenance? Because it seems like our maintenance isn't doing so well. I don't have all the answers, and it's hard to demonstrate that humility as a leader, because I think some people believe that they lose power whenever they get on those people, the junior soldiers levels. It's like, oh, why would I ask a private first class or a young NCO for help? I've been doing this for 15 years. You don't have all the answers. It's a fact. You really don't. And if someone on your team can help, you'd be foolish not to take it. That's my common sense approach to it. That's worked out so far.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of power to being a servant leader. And me being an introvert, I think that's kind of my leadership style, is servant leadership. I usually ask a lot instead of telling.
That's good.
I ask for subordinate feedback, even if it's something you don't want to hear. If it's something you don't want to hear, write it down, listen. There's a lot of great stuff that can just come from listening to someone, getting their opinion. You don't have to like it.
That's the
I think that's very powerful too. But yeah,
like a perfect segue into the last type as well. Honestly, is getting that feedback.
Yep.
All right, so our last type is participative leadership, where you bring the entire team into your decision-making processes, allow any soldier, their opportunity, a space to share their ideas on how to improve or to solve whatever those solutions might be to accomplish the mission. The leader may not be obligated to act on those ideas, but just having that pot of ideas to pull from lets them feel like they are involved in the process. I guess maybe it does also kind of thread through the other 2 types, where you can see where that might be going for the end state, and then of course giving them their voice, but now in a more profound way, where it's an entire leadership style.
Yeah, and I think what participative leadership means to me, from my personal vignette, my personal experience, was on the People First Task Force. If you remember, you were there just as early as me. All the whiteboard sessions we did with all the senior ranking people, and me being a major, you being a master sergeant, and you're surrounded by general officers, field grade officers, colonels, lieutenant colonels, doctors, senior civilians within the enterprise, across the enterprise, and you're whiteboarding all this stuff out, and they're asking you for feedback.
Yep.
How did it look as a company commander? How did it look as a first sergeant?
Yeah.
How did you address the problems of SHARP, the barracks, EO, racism, all that stuff? How did you address those problems because we were just there several years ago, so that we had the closest kind of experience in the room, and they're asking us for our pointed feedback. Very, very powerful experience for me to be in the room with those individuals at such high levels. And
that was deliberate, though.
Yeah.
That the task force was brought together, people from disparate MOSs, backgrounds, in order to have those perspectives, so they could get the diversity there in that room. Sorry.
Yeah, and then another part of the participative leadership model is being deliberate about it. That was a choice, and our chief of staff and our director, General Nori, now commander of 3rd Infantry Division, they wanted that brainstorming to occur.
Right.
It wasn't top down. It wasn't necessarily bottom up. It was, we kind of met in the middle. I thought it was a very, very cool thing to do, and I think that's how we were able to tackle all these problems in a positive way. But a quote I think is dangerous. Some leaders think this kind of leadership is dangerous, or they should avoid it because they think if I'm giving power away by giving my voice and sharing it with other people, you're losing power. You think that by giving junior soldiers, junior officers, junior NCOs that opportunity to give you feedback, you feel like you're losing power. I'm giving them a voice. I'm sharing power. It's not a zero sum game, and I'll get you the link for this great this chapter I read in our my master's degree program at Western Kentucky. There's a quote in there that says sharing power actually builds power, because power is not a zero sum game. If I don't have it, someone doesn't take it from me, or vice versa. You can share it by giving the people those voices, and it actually improves. It's kind of like our first topic in this podcast was sharing it. It actually, if you improve those individual skills, the team grows. So if you share power, the power of your team grows, and it's a very, very awesome thing. That quote really stuck with me from that master's degree program. But that's a huge part of participative leadership, is just getting the junior soldiers, letting them be heard. And I think there's a lot of crying out, especially on social media now. A lot of soldiers just want to be heard. You don't really have to act on it, like we said in the bullet point. The leader's not obligated to act on those ideas, but just giving them a voice, a forum, is good, a really good start, I think.
A tide lifts all ships.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's not a Sergeant Major quote, though, right?
No, I think that's a
That's
biblical
an old sailing
quote.
oh man, I should know that.
So.
Then. I should know that. Old Testament or New Testament?
I don't know. We'll look it up.
Yeah.
Hey, so, though, I think that, so when you listen to someone, you get their feedback and you validate it, essentially. Just, you know what, I hear you, I see that perspective, thank you for your feedback, that validation, I'm being heard, that feels good.
Mm-hmm.
That, check. There is a complementary process that I think has to kind of be involved in this type of leadership style, which is setting realistic expectations. We did have kind of a backfire on one of our efforts where we got all the way down to NCO level feedback, but they didn't understand that their feedback was feeding into an enterprise level.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't going to see immediate changes at their organizational level. And that was a failure on our part. So they got very frustrated and they were upset with how the process. And then what happens then is they just blame whatever immediate leader is in their sphere.
Right, it could get out of control.
Yeah, because, and it's not their fault. I mean, we're driving that down from Army enterprise down echelons. So that kind of backfired. So we did have to get better at setting those realistic expectations from what echelon we might be garnering that feedback from, right?
Mm-hmm.
If somebody shares with a sergeant major of the Army that their rent is not being paid, they shouldn't expect tomorrow their rent to be paid.
Right.
That's not if they want an enterprise level solution, they must have the correct echelon expectations. That is what I say.
Yeah.
But I cannot believe what the Army has let me do in my career. I have said so many times, you're going to let me do what? Okay. So, like, I've written POI for our MOS that's, I think, still in place. That was like 10 years ago. I don't know. Just, like, crazy things what they let me do with the assessment, with the pilot program.
The cat team and all that.
Oh no, with the fusion director pilot.
Just
to utilize my social work skills and just things like that. I was just like, okay, I just did my absolute best. So again, with organizational commitment, I will tie that back in. Like, you're gonna let me do this thing? Oh, now all that has been entrusted upon me. I'm going to try my best to do the best I can.
Yeah. I think I want to talk about your point about the frustration from the NCOs and they provided all of it, and then kind of they felt that nothing happened.
Right.
It seems to me like there's something we discussed in our leadership class in my master's program was I think they called it the student government paradox. You know, whenever you have a student government president says, okay, all the water fountains are gonna have Kool-Aid and everything's gonna change overnight, and what people need to understand the Army, and I'm a force management officer, this is my specialty, organizational change in the Army. Nothing happens overnight. So you can give all this feedback, you can put up the request for these pieces of equipment. You're not going to get it tomorrow, and it may take 6 months, may take a year, 2 years. Expectation management is key, and that's a key thing with participative leadership. The leader must get that message across that I'm taking the feedback, but there's only certain things I have the power to influence. That has to be very clear. Or you get the blowback, you get all the negative stuff. It may make it worse, it may make that culture worse in organizations. That's something that leaders have to be very cautious of whenever they get this feedback is, okay, I hear you, I'm listening, I'm going to act on, but I can act on A and B, C and D are going to have to wait, or that's not my authority to grant, stuff like that. You have to be very frank, very direct, and just make sure they understand that, or you can make it even worse. So that's a very important thing I wanted to highlight. And another thing before we kind of close it out, I guess, is participative leadership it's extremely difficult because in the military, we're a hierarchy. There's a lot of norms. If a lieutenant colonel, if someone higher ranking than you says do something, if it's a lawful order, you do it. There's really not a big. We're not very good at having that feedback loop. And then whenever you give feedback, something I ran into, I'm not sure if it's my mistakes or the way I do it. I try to do it in a professional way. Is sometimes whenever you give feedback, it's interpreted the wrong way. So that's something that I think we as an organization have to get better at, is operating within those hierarchical norms, getting participation from junior soldiers, but don't attack them when they provide that feedback. Don't deem it unprofessional, toxic followership. That's a term that's out there now because we have toxic leadership. So there obviously must be toxic followership. If I'm a good leader, it's kind of that Simpsons meme, or it's not me, it's the kids. So that's what I think of whenever people say things like this. It's not me, the leader. It's obviously the follower's fault. So it's something that I think we need to think about whenever we have these lessons learned, is you give them a voice, you let them air their voice, but don't attack them when they do it. You have to provide that really safe environment where they can validate their concerns and act on it if you can. But you have to provide that safe environment where the followers can provide that feedback. That's the only way this leadership model works, I think, is if that environment is there.
I think that we've just established 2 more videos that we need to do.
Yep, that's good.
So we can do some follow-ups on some of those more deep nuggets of truth bombs. You just bloop bloop right on top of us. What? You like my earrings? Oh,
I do actually, yeah.
Thank you. They're from a veteran-owned business called Leah Oak Boutique, and we support veteran-owned businesses.
Yep, sure do.
If you would like to shop with her, you can see her affiliate link in the description. As you can see here, it's the website. You can use code KS10 to get a 10% discount and support this veteran-owned business. Oh, those are familiar. Oh, yeah.
So to sum up, we talked about 3 leadership styles today in this podcast: transformational leadership, participative leadership, and servant leadership. Some key takeaways just to highlight: for transformational leadership, building that vision, giving the subordinates that sense of purpose, connecting the dots, I think is the most important things to take away from today's podcast on transformational leadership. For servant leadership, remembering where you came from, getting down there with your soldiers, performing those tasks, building that trust and rapport by doing that, and having your subordinates back, providing them with those basic needs that we talked about, the barracks issues, trying to solve that, food, water, air conditioning stuff, provide for their needs, have their back all the time, and just be down there with them. Have that presence is key, or the keys. Presence in servant leadership. And participative leadership, providing that safe environment, I think, is the most important. That safe environment for soldiers to provide that feedback, act on it if you can, just listen. Be there, listen to their concerns, and be very direct, very frank with them on what you can influence so it doesn't catastrophize or get worse and spiral out. But important to know take away with participative leadership is sharing power actually builds your power. I want to just make sure that quote is with everyone listening to this is you can give away some of your power and it's actually going to help. That's the positive we want to leave you with today. But thanks for stopping by and listening. Please like, subscribe, and continue listening. We'll be back here again next week, next Friday to air the next episode. But take care, and we'll see you later.
Yeah, share your comments so we can share with others. Thank you.
Awesome. See ya.